men would be less likely to take a woman back after she cheated than a woman will, which then begs the question, is there emotional sensitivity or emotional immaturity? Is there emotional immaturity or sensitivity, or what is it?
It's pride, it's arrogance, it's I can treat you any old kind of way, and you have to treat me the way that I want to be treated. Good. That is not of God, and I won't allow anyone to say otherwise. It's just tell the truth. You're being selfish, you're being arrogant, you're being prideful, you're being hypocritical, you are not following the scriptures, you are not following God, and what's inside of you needs to be killed, but you need to kill it. Or rather, you need to die to it.
That leads to the part that I said about the, men are damaged and are acting out in other ways, like non-sexual relationships. What I meant by that, I was saying men are showing themselves or expressing their frustration or expressing their distortion, I would like to call it, their distortion or this distorted views of love and all of that stuff and intimacy, because they've been damaged, they've been neglected, they've been abused, they've been broken in ways that lead them to that. And I'm not saying it's an excuse, but I think it's time when we see this. I'm always big about why. What's behind this? What led to this? I mean, I always look at any man that's operating like that is operating. It's primal. That means there's immaturity, meaning it's a debased. Kids, like, they pick up anything they eat, they'll cry when they want to, they jump. What makes a person, what exposes a person's maturity is their ability to choose no when it may be more convenient to say yes, to choose right when it may be more convenient to choose wrong. And I think that's a sign. That's what distinguishes us from men of God from dogs. When a dog is in heat, if he sees another dog's butt on the corner, I would just call it a butt. A dog's gonna jump on the butt and say, "Look, I'm waxing it." Dogs be on people's legs, jumping legs. It's like, I need this right now. It's instinct. So what differentiates a man from a dog is a man being able to say, I'm aware of this instinctive. So let's be honest, women that are listening to this. When you get your man of God will still have eyes. Your man of God will still have desires that might be outside of your home. Like, a man will go on the street, and if he sees a butt, he's not going to be like, you know what? My butt at home is so great, that butt doesn't exist. What he's doing is he has to make a conscious decision that says, you know what? That is something. That's something. However, I know who I am. I know what I have. And I do a value-based thing. What I have is so much greater. Even though that looks good, even though that's nice, I have chosen. It's all about choice. That's maturity. Being able to with rigidity stand on a choice. That's why they say, that's why adults can be held accountable, because adults have the capacity to stand on a choice. That's why you can't mess with children, because children can waver in the essence that they can't stand rigidly on a choice. Mommy said don't take candy from a stranger, but and so you can manipulate children. But an adult that can stand on a choice, that's the difference. And when a person has to give in to every instinct, then it's a real prevalent sign that they are child, dog, whatever you want. I'm not the one to say that you're operating like a dog. Not all men are dogs. They're not.
I tried. I tried.
And there are some women that act like that. So I'm gonna just be real.
No, I agree with you. I tried. I'm not, and I want to be really clear in saying there is now therefore no condemnation in Christ. I'm not condemning anyone who might even be in the situation where they're in a broken place and they are acting out. And I'm not saying, because this is what I love about God, whatever you see, there's always something behind it.
Oh, yeah.
But whatever you see is always the least amount of information that you have, which is why Christ could say, while they're killing him, spitting on him, beating him to death, everything, ripping things out and putting thorns on himself, all of that, what could come out of him is, forgive them, God. They don't know what they're doing. They don't. I know, but they don't mean it. They don't know. They don't. I know. Just let them go. They don't get it. I'm saying, whenever we see the
Yeah.
picture, whatever the picture is, if what you see is either a man who is cheating on his wife or his girlfriend, or you see a man who is single and he is, I don't know, he's got a harem and he's going from girl to girl, or he's just hitting and running, whatever it is, if a man is acting out in that, it doesn't mean, number one, which was my first question, he's a non-emotional being, which I love. Number two, it doesn't mean throw him away, he's evil, he's horrible, he's a cast aside, he's just the worst thing ever. Not necessarily. And three, which is more interesting to me, which I want to talk to you about, because that's the second part of your question. You said, however, I've noticed that most men are unaware of the damage caused by failed non-sexual relationships and spend their lives attempting to cope by destroying the romantic ones. And so I think what I'd like to give you the opportunity to explore here is what kinds of damage is going on when someone is acting out that way, because we do need to see men as three-dimensional beings. Where, and that's not to excuse sin for anybody who's being cheated on or anything. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm always just about trying to understand things.
Man, you know what I've seen majority of the time, it can be a lot of things, man. Coming up in the family, we don't realize that when a child is born and a child has to be raised, there is so much stewardship and responsibility that comes with it. I always say this, every time God gives something good, there's an expectation of stewardship to follow. He gave Adam and Eve the garden, and he said, tend to it. He gave them all these things, and he said, tend to it. He gave us bodies, and for some reason, our bodies don't self-wash. He gave us nails, and our nails got to be trimmed. Everything he gave, like, look after this thing. Everything that he provided, he's like, okay, what shows that you appreciate it is you tending to it. And the stewardship looks like this. It looks like investing and maximizing so that that thing could reach its full potential. And what's happening is people are having kids, and they're broken children are having broken children, and they're unaware of the responsibility that is required of them. They're unaware of the type of investment that needs to be poured into a child. So what happens, we always call, like, we're like, abuse is only this. Man, abuse is not knowing how to use something. It's wrong use. And so children are being wrongly used. And what's happening is the man, I've seen this so many times, the man, especially in our community, is under attack. And when that backbone is broken, all the other pieces just seem really difficult to put together. A lot of these men are raised by our single mothers, and it's not to say that these single mothers are not doing a great job, but single mothers are not men. And there are things that men could do, whether they're in the home or not in the home. The absence of what they provide leaves such a catastrophic blow and void in the nature of men and women. And so now we have societies and generations. People are like, oh, it's so hard for women to get married these days. Why? This is a lot of broken children, bringing forth broken children, bringing forth broken children, bringing forth broken children. And so now you have a generation of lost people. And so what it looks like to be cared for and nurtured. I grew up in a home where I had both parents in the house. And all the way up until like my 30s, I always looked at my dad as a good dad. He had a good job. He provided for us. He wasn't that mean. He didn't whoop me that much or anything like that. But I didn't realize that there were things that I needed from my dad. I didn't realize that I needed from my dad to look me in the eye when I would come back from school and say, you know what? How was your day? I love you. Give me a hug. Pouring his love and showing me that affection. And so what happened was I grew up with this void that was untended to. And I would claw my way into other relationships, and I would try to snatch it, or I would act out because I wasn't getting it. And so then sex now becomes a thing that you feel that you're owed because you weren't hugged. It turns into that. This little baby monster now turns into something that you don't understand. Now you wonder why they acting like that. Why they go out and cheat, or why they turn them to pornography. Man, it was a little baby monster, and it turned into a full-grown monster because it was untended to. It was no one was aware of it. And so there were things in me, like from fear of rejection and lack of affirmation and lack of affection, all of those things, I laid it as a burden on my wife when I first got into the relationship. I'm just like, yo, like I would start comparing her. I'm like, you're not like this, and why are you not like this, and why don't I feel this? I told her a few times back then. I was like, I don't even think you love me. And all the while, she's doing her best and showing me the love. And I didn't realize I was laying a burden on her that I didn't even understand. I didn't know that I had a fear of rejection. I didn't know that I had a lack of affirmation. And I didn't know that I needed that from my dad, because I was straight. I never cried over it, never grieved over it, never processed it. No one ever talked me through it. And so, like, I didn't know. I mean, I knew I was smart, so I just had everything that I needed, or thought I had everything that I needed, that I did not need to process and deal with some of the damage and the voids, so that I did not lay it unfairly as a burden on my wife. So now stewardship looks like, now in my relationship, hey, let me figure myself out. Let me figure out why, what, the who, what, where, why, and how. Why? Because God has called me to steward the relationship that I have with my wife well, and now for my children, so that I don't lay unnecessary burdens on them and then perpetuate the voids that they have. I have to be mindful to find what those things are. All of my children are different, and I have to tend to their individual needs differently, of being this or being seen this way, or allowing themselves to feel abandoned. So I have in our book, we call something surviving or survival strategies, or we call it emotional chemotherapy. And it's just this process where which we try to handle our own trauma ourselves. And in the act of trying to destroy and, hammer these things away and kick these things away, we're kicking away opportunities for healing. We're knocking away opportunities for clarity. And so this fight that we're fighting, we're not living, we're not thriving, we're not growing. All we're doing is surviving. We're just trying to get past, because there's something we're living through. We're living through the lenses of our pain, seeing through the lenses of our pain and our brokenness. But it sometimes takes people to just show you the mirror and say, this is what I'm seeing. Let's talk through that. Let's expose that. And if we could encourage our men, our boys, to say, tell me how you feel. Why do you feel like you feel? Be okay with saying, you hurt my feelings. I wasn't able to say that with my wife, like there are things that she would say. And it took me a while, and I broke down when I finally told her, it hurts my feelings when I hear this from you. Granted, I interpreted what she said differently, but it took me so long to say it hurt me. I would just get mad. I'd rather run and at the time was running to pornography. I would just like do that in spite and in bitterness. And that was my way to self-soothe. And that was my way to survive, when all I could have said was just, look, this is what I'm feeling, and this hurts me. And I had to understand why it hurt me, understand why I was feeling like that. And so, it just takes people around you that are willing to just sit down and say, hey, this is what I see, and drive you to therapy. There's a story in scripture where there was a child that had that spirit, like deaf and dumb spirit, and the Bible said he would cast himself into the fire, and he would hurt himself, and this spirit would cast the boy into the fire. By that spirit, cast the boy into the fire. And Jesus asked, how long has this been happening? And I believe the father said it was since he was a child. And it just stuck with me when he said, since he was a child. I think that the enemy strategically suppresses and attacks and oppresses children, and the child capacity, the familial capacity, in which where sons don't know how to be sons first. Why is that important? Because of all the roles you just named, son is the only one you will continue and exist in perpetuity as a child of God. Because while I can grow into being a father and learn how to be a husband and learn how to be a businessman of integrity, when this life is over, I'm going to go into the kingdom to still be a child and a son of God. And so if my idea is distorted about what it looks like to be vulnerable to my daddy, what it looks like to be loved on by my daddy, what it looks like to actually tell the truth and say, Daddy, I'm not happy today. Daddy, do you love me? Daddy, don't leave me. Daddy, are you gonna leave me? Daddy, do you got time for me? And if I can't get a hold of what it's like to be a son, then for the rest of this earthly life, I will be fighting, struggling, losing at the other areas, because the only area that God is going to carry us into eternity in is sonship. And that's what we need to focus on. And when you have those therapy sessions, what you end up finding out is that you're speaking to the son in them. You're speaking to the son in them. And as a 34-year-old man, those things that have bothered me were just the things, my fears, my childhood fears. 14, 13, 16, a boy. And so, like, if you guys